Okay, so good morning, everyone. A lot to talk about this morning. I just want to tell you one quick incident I had. I just had the zchut of spending Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah in the Holy Land of Israel. So many stories, because when you go to Israel, you always meet people along the way who tell you things. You see things you don't normally see. You hear things. So much to say about this. This is just one short trip, Baruch Hashem. But I wanted to share with you one thing which completely blew my mind. On Sunday night, we were about to leave, and my son said, my hair is too long, I'm going to yeshiva, I need a haircut. You know, the yeshivot get very strict about the hair. And unlike me, he has a big, full head of hair, Baruch Hashem, on the front of his head. It's called a chup. You heard this word? A chup. The boys in yeshiva, they want a big chup, the big thing, big hair at the front of the head. However, the yeshivot do not like it. So I had to find, late Sunday night, before the flight, a barber, because he had to go early this morning, 6 o'clock in the morning to yeshiva. I had to find him a barber to find. So I went online, and I found a guy who's open from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. every single day. So I called him up. I said, you know, at Apatuach, it was 9:25. He said, Ken, betach, ba. So I went to him, bo. He said, come. So I went to him with my son, Baruch Hashem, and we were the last ones there. And you get into conversations. He was a Sephardic Jew, religious guy, and he's talking to me, and he's giving me divrei Torah and discussions. And I see on the wall of his barber shop, there is a poster of a Bet Midrash and soldiers. Some inside the Bet Midrash and other soldiers. So I said, he didn't speak a word of English. So I said to him in Hebrew, I said, what is this poster? And he says, Ze kolel shani lomed. This is the kolel I learn in. I said, what is this kolel? And when do you do it? He says, this kolel, this learning establishment, was set up at the beginning of the war, and it's called the Chatzot Halayla Kolel. There are 18 guys who learn in this kolel from Chatzot, about midnight, every night. They learn together until Netachama, until the sun rises. They pray net, and then they go to their day of work. So they work all day. This guy actually learns in kolel in the morning. His only source of income is this barber shop, which is connected to his house, that he does 4 or 5 hours every single day. And then he goes home, spends some time with his family, I guess his kids, and then he goes and he learns all night. I said, when do you sleep? And he burst out laughing, I was making a funny joke. So I said, what is the idea of this kolel? Why was this established? So he says they sponsor soldiers. That's why there are some soldiers in the kolel, but mostly are not there because most of them are fighting on the various fronts that are being fought at right now. But this kolel was set up as a form of spiritual haganah, a spiritual protection for the soldiers and even for the captives. What a Mika Amcha Yisrael. It just you walk past this barber shop, that's another guy making a living, cutting hair for himself, And inside you learn this beautiful secret of a man who's given up his nighttime sleeping. It just blew, and there's 18 of them. At one point there was 60 of them, but they all had to go to the front. They weren't available to learn this kolel because they're all fighting in Gaza and in Lebanon. Anyway, so while I was there, I gave a donation. If you're interested, I brought the card back. If you want to donate towards the Avrechim, towards the guys who learn the kolel, because they are financially incentivized to do it as well, which they need at this time of year because their businesses obviously are affected as well. So that is the Chatzot Halal Kolel. All I can say is it was just an emotional, amazing experience when that's Eretz Yisrael. You just go for a haircut and there's an entire story, an entire world that is opened up for you just talking to one simple barber in Eretz HaKodesh. They have one in Brooklyn as well? Ad Akshav they do it? Wow. Oh, it was just at that time they just set it up. There's an inyan. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Listen, you want Torah, Yom V'Layla, and most people are asleep. That's actually one of the opinions, that God created the world with different time zones, was that at some point, someone somewhere is learning Torah. At any given point, because we know that if Torah wouldn't be learned for even a moment, the entire world would collapse. Right? Whatever that means. So they say HaKadosh Baruch Hu created time zones. But in a matzav like we're in right now in Eretz Yisrael, I'm sure there's more of these, by the way. This is just one. If this is one barber shop in Yerushalayim, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of them all over Eretz Yisrael. But a tremendous, tremendous zchut. Okay, with that being said, we have to meet the hero of our story on the parasha. Just a quick and beautiful idea into Noah. So who was Noah? So Noah is considered to be the father of all humanity, because we have the Mabul, we have the flood, and the flood destroyed, some say all of the earth, some say the majority of the earth. Actually, the Gemara in Zvarchim says that Eretz Yisrael was not affected by the Mabul, by the flood. It wasn't affected because Eretz Yisrael is so kadosh that it didn't need the purifying mikveh waters of the Mabul to purify it. That's the Gemara. It's a Gemara that Eretz Yisrael was not affected. Some say it wasn't directly affected, but the water washed over it, just on the surface. But the level of treatment that Eretz Yisrael needed was not at the level of the rest of the world. So there's a lot to unpack over here, because we take, as children we learn Noah, he's on the Teva, he has all the animals. Well, let me ask you a very simple question. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God could do whatever he wants, right? Could he have taken Noah for 1 year, that the entire world was being destroyed, stuck him on the beach in Tel Aviv or Eilat, I don't know, somewhere, put the animals all around him, let him live around the animals for an entire year, and then, at the end of the year, finished, the job is done, the evil people have gone, you can go back and enjoy society. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do this weird thing of make him live on a Teva, an ark, for an entire year? And by the way, it was, I know, again, the kids come back with little diagrams, the 3 levels of the Teva, of the ark, with the family and the animals and the refuse. It was the most disgusting environment. It stank. Rashi says, and it's based on the Pasuk, that Moshe Rabbeinu was vomiting, he was retching from the smell and the work. Some animals up at night, some during the day, he did not sleep, except for a couple of moments here and there, because some animals need to be fed at night, some during the day. At one point, he was feeding one of the lions or the tigers. He got bitten on his arm. It was a terrible experience. Don't think he's walking around on some cruise liner, schlepping around, on Costa Rica, having a good time with a bunch of animals. This is not what it was. It was a disgusting, challenging, gross experience that he and his family went on. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do that to him? Why did he have to spend an entire year with animals, feeding them, taking care of them, treat them? What is the secret behind this? So Rabbi Dessler gives a very, very famous answer to this very important question. And the outcome of this is going to affect us all, Bezrat Hashem. And he says like this: what was the problem with the people of the Mabul of the flood? So we know they were takers. They were takers. They would take each other's property. They would take each other's things, their land. They would take each other's wives. A person, says Rashi, brings us down for the Gemara, was about to get married, and he'd be under the chuppah, whatever the chuppah was in those days. He would grab the husband or the wife, made no difference, and they would have relations with them there and then. It was the most depraved, selfish group of people who've existed in world history. Absolutely all about most self-centered, narcissistic people who lived, who treated each other abysmally. That's who they were. Now Noah, we're told, Ele told Noah, Noah ish tzaddik. He was a righteous person. I had a rabbi who people would go to him on Shabbat. When I was a bachur, I used to go to him on Shabbat. And if you were there on Parshat Noach, he'd always say, please give me a Devar Torah on Parshat Noach. He would go around. Actually, you'd either have to sing a song, right, a zemer for Shabbat, or give a Devar Torah. He said, but if you give a Devar Torah, please, no lashon hara about Noach. He was a tzaddik. People always talk bad about him. He was a bad chas v'chalila. The Torah calls him a tzaddik. If the Torah calls you a tzaddik, you're doing very well in life, believe me. And even though he was a tzaddik, a great, great man, Rabbi Dessler says even great people who live among bad people somehow are contaminated by their presence. Just the way it is. Even if you're a great tzaddik, just being around negative people somehow is going to negatively influence your personality. Even not on a conscious level, but on a subconscious level. So what was the problem with the people of the days of Noach? They were takers. They were selfish, self-centered, narcissistic. Noach, without even knowing it, and his family must have been spiritually defiled by these people, and there must have been a part of them that was all about themselves. So, says Rabbi Dessler, that means Noach was a taker. He was a taker. How do you make a person into a giver? And he says very famously, the best way to become a giver is to give. Become a noten, someone who wants to give other people. Who are the lowest creatures in this world? Animals. So Noach was told that in order for you to uproot that part of your personality that may have been spiritually defiled by the takers in your generation is to give. How do you become a giver, he says? Give. That's the solution. People are looking for psychological answers and financial. You just give. When you give to other people, you become a giver. That's what he says. That's why he says the word for love is ahava, and the word ahava has inside it hav, which means to give. How do you become a giver? How do you become an ohev? By hav, by giving. And when you give someone, he says, and this is a very famous idea, but a very important one, the more you give, the more you love that person. And so Noach was told to sit in a 1-year university. And what was this university? The university of becoming a giver. So Hashem couldn't have just left him on a beach for an entire year with the animals to hang out and chill and then bring him back to humanity. The way that Noach had to be rescued and become a giver was to give to animals for 1 year, 24/7. To give and give and give. By the end of this, he graduated by becoming the future of humanity that now had uprooted any part of selfishness that had been invested inside it. Now, of course, after this event, there were other people who came along and defiled. But you'll notice, what was the next major event that followed the flood? The Dor HaFlaga. The Dor HaFlaga. Who are the Dor HaFlaga? They were the people of the Tower of Babel. Now, I have a lot to say on these individuals. When we were children, we were told they built a tower in order to reach the heavens to fight God. That is a very childish understanding. The Malbim tells us something unbelievable. He says the Dor HaFlaga, this generation of the Tower of Babel, weren't physically trying to reach the heavens, although there is a very famous piece of Torah from Rav Yonasan Eibeshitz. He says actually they were trying to do that. They were actually trying to create a tower to create spaceships to leave Earth to inhabit the moon. That's what he says. Some say the tower itself was a very advanced technology that in and of itself was there to launch up to the moon. Why do they want to leave Earth? Because they felt we're sinners and there's going to be another flood. So they wanted to create some kind of technology to leave Earth and to go to the moon. Why do they need a tower to do that? Well, they knew that the air was thinner the higher you were. So they thought the forces of gravity were weaker the higher you got into the atmosphere. So they wanted to create a massive tower, some say is a launching pad to help them launch off to go to the moon. They learned from this that maybe the technology of our ancestors was greater than we give them credit for today. We thought they're primitive, people. They had great technology back then, and much of this technology may have been lost over the years. So that's what they were trying to do. However, the Malbim says differently. He says no. what they were creating was a dictatorship. A dictatorship. And there was a law that you had to live within visual sight of this tower. This was the earliest form of a communistic dictatorship, that you had to be in sight of Big Brother, like 1984. Everyone had to be seen visually from this tower. Nobody was free. You had to live under the control of Nimrod, who was the dictator of his day. And so you had to be seen from this tower. That was what was happening. Okay? Now, something very interesting. These people rebelled against God. They fought God. They didn't want God in their life. They wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. That was the disease of the Tower of Babel. Let's compare and contrast these two groups. You have the Dor HaMabul, the generation of the flood, and you have the generation of the Tower of Babel. Which would you say is worse? The generation of the flood were bad towards each other, but they didn't rebel against God. And the generation of the Tower of Babel, they were actually rebelling against God, but they were nice to each other. What happened to the generation of the flood? The people they were destroyed and wiped out. Why? They were not good to each other. The generation of the Haflaga, of the separation of the Tower of Babel, they were allowed to survive. Because God said, you can rebel against me. I get it. You're angry with me. I know, I understand. That's not okay. But it's not as bad as being bad towards each other. So it was because of Noah, who had become the giver in his generation, by giving to the animals for 1 year, that this generation were the result of. So he actually saved society a little bit later. He saved the generation that came after him by becoming a giver. So all of his descendants were like, you know what? We can rebel against Hashem, God. But whatever you do, do not rebel against each other. And that is, by the way, a great secret and a trick when it comes to doing Averot. Now, I'm not condoning this or advocating to do sins. But if you were to choose a sin to do, or if you want to be judged better, we learn, and Rashi mentions from the Gemara, Rashi mentions it. Hashem has a higher tolerance for your rebellion against him than he does for your rebellion and bad treatment towards each other. I'm just letting you know. That is a Rashi. Take it or leave it. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is quicker to forgive your rebellion against him, like the door of the Tower of Babel, who were not killed, who were just made to separate out and go their different ways, than they are towards the Mabul, who were good towards God and believed in God, but were bad towards each other. That, my friends, is the secret of the Dor Haflaga, towards the door, the generation of the Tower of Babel. Okay? There is another connecting piece that I must mention, and that is, we see from here the importance of freedom. We don't want governments, any form of governing reality that takes full control. People are free. Even an Eved, even someone who is forced to sell himself or herself because of financial challenges in order to survive and go into someone else's house, they are told to free up to 7 years. We don't want people controlled by other individuals. That is not the only one we want controlling us is our own personal, moral, and ethical ideals and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and God. Okay? That's a very important addendum over here. And we see that because Nimrod used the tower as a way to control other people. That is not what Hashem wants. He doesn't want people controlling people. People have to be controlled by God and God alone. People should help and assist other people, but never control them. That is not the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants humanity to exist. Okay? In the schut of this, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll see good news from our soldiers in Eretz HaKodesh. Every day we're hearing terrible stories. May all the Torah that we study, all the tefillot, all the tears that we shed, which everyone at this time, of course, may come as a B'ezrat Hashem, a Hatchalat Geula for us, and bring us all home, B'ezrat Hashem, all our captives home, all our soldiers, our holy soldiers home as well. Bimhira v'yamenu. Amen. Have a great, successful day.